Time Congress has pulled the country back after it briefly fell over the fiscal cliff. House members approved the Senate deal. One of the biggest highlights of the deal is that it keeps tax rates the same for couples making less than $450,000. Now, many Republicans aren't happy because the deal adds $4 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. And it puts off debate with the president about automatic domestic and military spending cuts for 2 months.
Last evening's vote regarding the so-called fiscal cliff is yet another example of Washington's willingness to forego making difficult long-term decisions regarding spending in deference to short-term fixes that do not solve our looming debt crisis.
I will sign a law that raises taxes on the wealthiest 2% of Americans while preventing a middle-class tax hike.
Congress missed the deadline to avoid going over the fiscal cliff, but did come up with this 11th-hour solution that hikes taxes for the wealthiest Americans.
Wisconsin's congressional delegation was split on this fiscal deal. Fox 6's Mike Lowe joins us in the studio with tonight's political lowdown. Mike?
And Ted, the split really came inside of the Republican Party. Republican House members faced a tough choice. Vote no, and everybody's taxes go up. Vote yes, and only wealthy people get hit, but it violates one of your core principles. Menominee Falls Republican Jim Sensenbrenner was particularly displeased with the deal.
The fiscal deal is bad for America.
But the deal only passed with Republican support, illustrating how the GOP was not moving in lockstep.
We Republicans have never acted like the Rockettes in New York City. I think every Republican representative had to make a determination on what was best for the country and best for their constituents.
If we come up with new budget solutions.
One of them is Janesville Republican Paul Ryan, who voted for the deal, even though it meant raising taxes on wealthy Americans. He issued a statement saying, "I joined my colleagues in the House to protect as many Americans as possible from a tax increase. I commend my colleagues for limiting the damage as much as possible."
Not only do you have to look at what is achievable, what could we get done, but what could we do to protect the tax rates for the largest number of Americans we possibly can?
Appleton Republican Reed Ribble sided with Ryan and against many of his fellow Republicans. He said the deal, which included fixing the so-called milk cliff by extending farm subsidies, was good for Wisconsin.
There was a fix to the dairy policy that was included in here, so one of our largest industries is able to have the social or the safety net that's required to maintain the proper pricing on dairy products.
Both of Wisconsin's senators, Republican Ron Johnson and retiring Democrat Herb Kohl, voted for the deal. In the House, 5 members voted for it, including all of the Democrats. Both sides are now gearing up for a fight over spending cuts. Milwaukee Democrat Gwen Moore says, "It is my sincere hope that the GOP does not try to take a hatchet to the much-needed social programs that will be necessary in keeping our economy moving forward."
I hope we make our stand on spending cuts rather than wimping out like we did late in the night on New Year's Eve.
And we should note that we reached out to every Democratic member of the Wisconsin delegation today, and none was available for an on-camera interview. The next part of this fiscal cliff debate, the spending cuts, was postponed. Republicans say they'll be on more solid political footing to make those arguments about spending reductions now that the tax issue has been dealt with. How this will affect Wisconsin's state budget? Well, we'll hear from Governor Scott Walker coming up at 6. Back to you.
Real Hobson's choice for many, Mike. All right, thanks. Speaking of solid footing, the Packers hope to have a lot of it Saturday night up at Lambeau Field.
Players are pumped, fans are pumped.